Today's guest is Colin O'Brady. I've had Colin on the show before, and it was one of my favourite episodes. He's an adventurer of considerable note. So many world records in his back pocket in so many disciplines, including rowing across Drake Passage. This time, he's turning his attention to cycling. He's taking on the Race Across America, but he's not just taking it on, he's attempting to beat the world record. The mission is to complete the Race Across America in less than 6 days and 11 hours. This is how he prepared. It's Colin O'Brady. Colin, welcome back to the Roadman podcast.
Great to be here again, my friend.
It's been a minute.
Few things have happened, I think, in both our lives probably since the last time we chatted.
Yeah, I gotta say 800 episodes ago. So yeah, it's been a while.
You look at you, man. I'm impressed. That's consistency. That's great consistency. That's the cycling mentality right there. Just keep getting after it day after day.
Yeah, that was exactly it. Like I had friends that are talking about launching podcast and then they quit like 10 episodes later. Like, oh, I'm just not sure it's getting traction. I'm just like, consistency is just the cheat code for everything.
Sure is. Sure is. It's people sometimes want the silver bullet to success, but more often than not, it's like, yeah, wake up, chop wood, carry water, keep going. Another day, another day, another day.
And even more so in the culture we're in, where I always feel like there's a pendulum, and the pendulum for a long time, high performance happens in the shadows. It happened in the dark. No one was too sure what was going on with high performers. I feel like the pendulum has swung way too far to the wrong side now, where everybody's like, just take this ketone shot and you're going to be world class. It's like, no, there's no just take this key. You still got to do it to chop wood, carry water. Maybe it helps 0.001%.
It's the last 0.1% or something like that. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
I think since we chatted last, you had a failed, can I call it a failed expedition in Antarctica? What happened there?
Yeah, that's a reasonable assessment. Yeah. I was in Antarctica about 5-6 months ago now. Was attempting another solo expedition down there. The stated goal was to try to do in 2018, I was the first to cross Antarctica solo and unsupported the landmass. It's like 1,000-mile journey that had never been accomplished before, and that was successful. This time, that one I was dragging a 375-pound sled because it's just, to go that far of a distance, I got to take as much supply as you can. I was still losing a ton of weight. And then I wanted to go back and it looks similar from the outside if you're not inside the polar niche, but it's actually almost the direct opposite, which I was trying to do a speed record, which was from the coast just to the South Pole. So instead of making a full traverse, stopping at the South Pole as the finish line, but as fast as possible on this kind of specific route that has been that's the route that people do for the speed record for the fastest known time. It's called the Hercules Inlet route. It's fair to say it didn't quite go as planned. Literally 2 hours into the expedition, I was taking my very first break. I still have it was a 715-mile route. I had gone 4 miles, so I still had 711 miles to go. And I took my first break, took a pee break, and then started off on my sled as you do. It was about 200-pound sled, which sounds heavy, but is half the weight of my other expedition. So it seemed relatively light. And I push off, and all of a sudden, boom, ground breaks out from under me. Turns out I'm standing on a snow bridge, and I start just free falling into a crevasse, unroped, of course, because I'm alone. And I would, it's safe to say, I don't say this, in a small way, but I was a very, near death. I was very fortunate to survive that fall. I kind of wedged my body inside of the crevasse. I was dangling over, 400 feet of air, quite literally, and just happened to just arrest my fall sort of by instinct. Kind of imagine yourself if you fell down a chimney and just put your legs and arms out and try to catch you. My back is up against one side, my feet and skis are skittering across the other side, and I'm just wedged in there with nothing. And then my sled, 200 pounds, I look up and I see it sort of teetering on the edge above me. So if that falls in, 200 more pounds, that's dragging me to the bottom as well. So anyways, a longer story than that, but it's fair to say that the expedition was not successful in its stated goal. But I will call it a success, which is I always say with any of my expeditions, coming home alive, all my fingers, all my toes, with a smile on my face is the number one mode of success. So I did manage to get myself out of the crevasse just barely and survive an unroped crevasse fall. And certainly it's only been, it's been 6 months. I'm still kind of processing, through touching death that closely. But I'm grateful to be here. That's for sure.
I remember last time we talked, and this is a compliment to the story you told me, because with 1,000 podcasts, you're chatting with a lot of guests, and there's a lot of conversations that don't have that indelible memory that is ingrained into your psyche after it. But a story I've retold to friends afterwards, it was the one where you were rowing Drake Passage and you're in the crawl space and it's a horrible storm and you wake up. I'm going to do it a disservice, so I advise people to go back and listen to that episode. But essentially, you wake up after one of the worst storms you've ever experienced to this beautiful, calm bay. And the message I took from it is sometimes we have to experience bad stuff to truly appreciate good stuff. And on a not so dramatic level, I take that lesson, every single day, whether it's if I just decided after recording podcasts for the day to flake out and watch Netflix with my fiance, yeah, it's maybe enjoyable. But what if we go for a hike first in the bad weather and then come home and, have a hot bowl of soup by the fire watching Netflix? It's a totally different experience. Having a little bit of hardship increases those memorable experiences. Has the crevasse fall changed your opinion on that? Or, as you say, is it still something you're processing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That lesson was definitely pronounced from the Drake Passage of, arriving to the shores of Antarctica, not on a private jet or a yacht, but on a rowboat, and having grinded through some of the worst storms and most uncomfortable moments of my life. Just, having that, being able to see Antarctica, but having earned it in that way, of course, is, like you said, it allows that kind of almost higher high of the deeper gratitude. But there's nothing quite like, touching death in this way to make you feel so grateful for life. And now I'm not recommending that you go throw yourself down a crevasse so you feel this way, but it's definitely a net product. And if I look for the bright side in that, I recently became a father. My son this week actually turns 1 year old, but when this happened, he was 6 months old. And to have, obviously so excited to be a new father and have this beautiful little baby boy, and then all of a sudden realizing life is so fragile, and that I could have gone, he could have gone through life without a father, and let alone even selfish me, I wouldn't have had the experience of being able to raise him. That puts that into perspective. And so not just with fatherhood, but with all the sort of simple joys in life, be able to just kind of be like, oh, wow, like what a gift every single day is. Even those days that you kind of got to grind through it and you're in front of your computer, maybe not doing, your exact favorite thing or whatever, just be like, hey, it's a gift just to be here. And so that's definitely been one of the most sort of indelible outcomes of this tragedy. Really, what was really just being deep gratitude for all the little things, the small joys. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to go, chase other big projects and push my body in big ways, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I got this big, cycling world record, coming up here in a couple of weeks. But it definitely, also makes me really appreciate, just these small moments, and just the deep gratitude for being alive.
Why do you think we do it? Like you said, every day is a gift, and you maybe only realize that when you're faced in, very close proximity to death, like you have been. But we take this calculation almost every day. Some of us listen to the podcast, we'll throw ourselves down descents 70, 80, 90, 100 kilometers an hour down alpine descents with 2 small rubber contact points to the ground. You're making that risk to reward calculation all the time, but there is something about that. We know it's dangerous, but we do it anyway. What attracts us to that?
It's interesting. People have asked me, even with fatherhood, this question of like, well, are you going to stop doing all the things that you've done now that you're a father? And it's similar, the question you're asking, maybe not through the lens of fatherhood, but it's an interesting entry point to answer the question, which is I'm always interested when people ask that question, because then if you take that to its furthest extreme, it's like, well, then what should I do? Should I just sit in my house in the most protective bubble, order food from Uber Eats so I don't even have to drive a car and risk, getting in a traffic accident, or, it's like, put myself in an most insulated bubble, whatever. Like, that's not living, right? Like, that's not actually living. Now, of course, on the far other side of the spectrum is it, don't want to play Russian roulette every single day with my life. And eventually that's not going to go well, right? Like you're not going to end up alive. But, the way I think about it is, I've written a couple of books. I wrote one, The Impossible First, after my, solo Antarctica crossing. And I have this picture of my son one day, 20 years from now, maybe he picks up the book and reads this book. And I'd hate for him to read it and go, Dad, you did a bunch of cool shit right up until I was born. And then you sat inside the house and watched Netflix. That's the only version I know of you, is like this, guy who just kind of gave up on all of his dreams, right? And of course, I don't think that that's actually healthy. I think actually going out and living your passion. So if your passion is riding bikes, like you said, with those rubber contact points, flying down a mountain and, figuring out, getting your corner in better or worse, so that's going out in nature, or that's anything. It doesn't have to be, active with your own body, but really pursuing life in a passionate way. And I think that I think that we are patterned to not be closely connected to death. What I mean by that is, like, it's a survival mechanism. Oh, we're going to live forever. And we know in the back of our mind everyone's going to die, but it's easy to just be like, oh, another day, got to punch the clock, got to do the thing or whatever. And it's so often that people get to the end of life, right? I'm really fascinated by speaking to elders about that, people that are in the final chapters of their life, their 80s or whatnot. And so often people, of course, have these deathbed regrets. Gosh, I shouldn't have worried about this so much. I shouldn't have been as cautious. I shouldn't have taken, I should have taken more, bold risks in my life or whatever. And so I look back on that and go like, hey, like, before you get to 80, you can have some of those realizations. And so to me, the gift of having touched death so closely so recently, but also just in my own life of having kind of a curiosity around that, has been, I think it's great to bring that in and not be evasive to the feeling of death, because actually what I think it brings is a more gratitude and fulfillment in your daily life, and allows you to make choices, like you say, to like, wow, like today is a gift. What can I do today? What can I do tomorrow, etc.
Yeah, I wonder, does your subconscious slightly alter? Because we use the two extreme examples of wrapping yourself in cotton wool versus Russian roulette, but obviously that's a continuum that slides. Like we've seen for a long time, the best sprinters in the world are, cycling wise, best sprinters in the world are normally younger guys with no families. Now, there's a load of different reasons for that. We could unpack it because, early in your career, you're hungry, monetarily, you haven't made that much cash, so you're more risk on. But definitely the presence of a child in someone's life seems to change their risk perception, even when they say it doesn't.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, I was watching, I'm not so up on all the names of all the cyclists, so you'll have to help me here. But I was watching the Cavendish documentary, I think it was, and they show that other guy. What's the guy who got in that insane crash sprinting? Like he hit the barrier and blew up, like,
Jakobsen.
That was Norwegian guy, maybe
Fabio Jakobsen tore a Poland crash. Horrible.
My God, bro, that crash! Like they put it in like slow mo, and then of course they interview him. I mean, he sounds like he's come back to form and really performed well on the backside of that. But like, look, like, so it's funny. Like everyone has different risk tolerance. I'll take this in a slightly different direction. Like, I'll talk to some pro cyclists or something like that, and they're like, I can't believe you are on the summit ridge of Everest and you walked over dead bodies. Like that's insane. And like for me, I'm like, I feel actually pretty controlled in that environment, in the alpine environment, because I've worked on that my whole life. And yes, of course, there's inherent risks, and I'm nervous at times. But then I'm like in a peloton, and some guys like trying to throw like 1,500 watts through his bike and cut through this gap. I'm like, yo, you guys are crazy, man. I would never do that. So like, to me, that seems even crazier than climbing the mountain. So I guess everyone has their own sort of calibration on that of where they feel in control. But certainly that's an interesting data point with the younger guys being the, Rick averse. I mean, for me, I think we probably talked about it last time, but I was 22 years old. I got severely burned in this fire in Thailand, and I was jumping a flaming jump rope, and I ultimately wrapped around my body and lit my entire body on fire to my neck. Almost, nearly, I don't know if I nearly died, but I had no skin on the lower half of my body, and the doctor said I would probably never walk again normally. And when I reflect on that, I'm like, yeah, that my 22-year-old self thought that jumping a flaming jump rope in the middle of rural Thailand, like what could possibly go wrong, right? Like we don't have that fully formed prefrontal cortex yet. We don't quite have that perspective. And, that's, I guess, it's part of the arc of life.
So you're segueing from your world into more so my world. Is it June 15th or June 16th? You're kicking off Race Across America with the ambitious goal to try and break the world record for it. I think the current record, correct me if I'm wrong, stands at 6 days and 11 hours. Hey Roadman, excuse the short interruption. I love riding the bike, but on account of being so busy with the podcast at the moment, I'm now what's called a time crunched rider. I never thought I'd see the day. But I have a tool. I'm using Wattbike to keep myself sharp and on point with specific sessions to maximize that available training time. I have a Wattbike Atom right here in the recording studio beside me, and when I have an hour in between interviews, I jump on. It's removing all the friction points for me. There's no more 10-minute setup, unfolding legs, banging my knees off stuff, getting my hands dirty, the usual connection issues. It just works every single time. The Atom's perfect for virtual racing as well because it has crisp gear changes, it has 1% accuracy, and it has max gradient capability of up to 25%. If you're looking for an indoor trainer, I honestly couldn't recommend this any higher. I've been using a Wattbike since 2013. Honestly, it's the last indoor trainer that you're ever going to need. If you head on over to wattbike.com now and use code ROADMAN10, that's ROADMENTEN, and that's going to get you 10% off your Wattbike.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm doing me and my childhood best friend, a guy named Lucas Clark. We met in the first grade. We literally met when we were 5 years old. Been hanging out for 35 years ever since then. It's quite a gift to have a lifelong friend like that. We've had all sorts of adventures throughout our life. Going back a decade plus, I was a professional triathlete. So in those years, I did ride my bike a fair amount, but also mixed in there with swimming and running. But it'd been nearly a decade since I'd been on a bike other than to tool around in my neighborhood. But Lucas, he's not a professional cyclist, but, he's a dad, a father of three, 41 years old, and he's got a good job, entrepreneur, whatnot. But he's a passionate cyclist. He's gotten to Cat 1 level of cycling, had some success himself, won the single speed Unbound gravel and won a few Masters World Championships on the track. And, but loves cycling. I mean, he lives and breathes it for the last 20 years. And we've always wanted to do a project. He's like, your world record projects are great. He's like, you've got 10 world records, Colin. He's like, but the only way we could ever do one together is when you bring it into my domain. How about we get you back on a bike? And so we kind of dreamed this up. I really started training and talking about it 2 years ago, but really started training for it about a year ago for me. And it has been quite a joy to get back on a bike. I must say, it's been a long time since I've looked at, power and watts and the heart rate and, all the ways that you can measure, aerobic fitness and whatnot. But I love that part of cycling, how measurable it is. And of course, just the freedom of being out on the roads. I travel a ton just with my life in general. So I've had to tote a bike around with me, but it's, in the last year, I've ridden, in Majorca, in Texas, in Jackson Hole, in Arizona, in the desert, in the mountains, it's lots of just beautiful places. And, I had those experiences. But yeah, the record itself is the pairs record for the Race Across America, which means one of us is riding at any given time. So we're mostly thinking we're going to do about, 90 minutes on, 90 minutes off, kind of 90 minutes or 2 hour cycles. And there's a van, it's supported. So when the other person's not riding, they hop in a van and try to catch 30 minutes of sleep and, eat a little bit of food before they get back out there on the road. And you're correct. The current record is 6 days, 11 hours, which is also in miles per hour. I don't know what the kilometers per hour, forgive me, but the miles per hour is 19.85 miles per hour, what that is. And so we have named, I'm wearing the hat actually, we've named our project Sub 6. Of course, if we get 6 days, 10 hours, I'd be stoked because we break the record. But our even more ambitious kind of stretch goal is to actually go under 6 days, which would be, roughly 21 miles per hour. But, to break the record, essentially, we need to average 20 miles per hour, nonstop, continuous. It's not a stage race. There's no breaks. Like when the gun goes off at noon on June 15th, it's continuous nonstop for the next, hopefully, just under 6 days.
Here's a crazy question. Why not just go ride it? Why do you need to break the record?
No, it's good. It's a great question. For me, what I've found is I love stakes. I think that stakes really do, excite me. I've used this metaphor before, but it's like if you're climbing Mount Everest, if I said to you, hey, Anthony, you can climb Mount Everest, but there's zero risk. You're 100% going to make the summit. You can't fall. You can't die, you can't twist an ankle, and you're going to go see this beautiful view from the top of the world. It'd be amazing, but it wouldn't quite have the same emotional arc to it because when you're up there in the death zone on Everest, the stakes of the environment are actually what make it such a heightened and forgive the pun, but peak experience. With the world record, attempt, when I really thought about it, I'm grateful, I'm humble, that I've been able to set 10 world records previously in different mediums, from polar travel to rowing to, mountaineering, etc. Um, my main why for doing this is to have an epic adventure with my childhood best friend. And then what we quickly realized is to support this project, it's not just the two of us. There's 15 people supporting this project. There's multiple vehicles and vans, a lot of different logistics. And I was like, wait, this is not just me and my childhood best friend. Let's bring together 15 epic people that we want to have this incredible, lifelong experience with. And so, we talked to all sorts of different friends and got lots of great people on board who are, have done amazing things, at the athletes themselves, physical therapists, chiropractors, just eclectic group of friends and supporters to do this project. And so for me, the first and foremost is to have an amazing adventure. But by setting that world record goal, it has given it stakes. It has not just been like, hey, let's tool our bikes across America, because we both are pretty confident that we could complete the route. And so because of that, that's given our training more sharpness and more focus. It's no different than someone saying, anyone on this call, hey, Mike, I've never ridden 100 miles before. I want to do this Grand Fondo, in 2 months. I'm going to train for it. Like it gives their training purpose. And the other thing that's been amazing has been, not only these 6 days coming up starting on June 15th, but it's Lucas and I, we don't live in the same city. But we have basically been training for this. We've had the same coach. We've met up numerous times throughout this year. We went to the wind tunnel, which we should talk more about over in England, your side of the pond. We had training camp in Arizona. We had this team training camp in Texas. It's given us all these different touch points to go ride our bikes and have a blast together with our friends and our team and such that. And so to me, the world record, because it gives it sort of a frame on it, makes it exciting, gives it stakes, but it also gives us context to deepen our relationship and ultimately have a lifelong experience, no matter win, lose, or draw. Although I do think we have a good shot at setting the record.
So you've essentially had to become a professional athlete to achieve this. So let us inside your world. What's training looking like at the moment? What's obviously you're probably approaching, if not already, in a taper period, but what's a typical training non-taper period look like in terms of duration?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we've been coached by this guy named Gary Hand, who, if anyone's looking for, like, in my opinion, I've been coached by a lot of coaches in my life and a lot of high performance Olympic coaches, whatever. Gary Hand is a gem. He's like a diamond in the rough. He's this epic guy, Scottish guy. Did a little bit of Euro Pro Tour racing back in the day. But just honestly, maybe my favorite coach that I've ever had. He's just on it. Super humble guy. Coaches that we've been in person with him several times, but of course, a lot of our coaching is remote, on Training Peaks and whatnot. But it's been amazing. He really looked at this year and said, like, hey, let's do a reverse periodization on this. Let's look at where we need to get these different peak moments, these big build moments, high volume. And then he's also been really great at, I have been a professional athlete in different mediums, throughout my life. And I think the best high performance coaches, particularly when you're talking about professional sports, is, when you're coaching kids, it's like all about getting them to show up and like try their hardest. Yeah. Right. And I think when you're coaching professional athletes, it's the opposite. It's actually like, hey, these guys are so hyper motivated that it's actually my job to tell them, like, yo, you got to back off. We actually need, this ride to be easy. So more often than not, he's like, I told you to ride this ride zone 2 at 240 watts or whatever it is. He's like, why'd you ride it at 250? Like, I don't go, like, actually back off. You're riding this too hard, or that interval was too strong. But he's been, seriously, just literally, if anyone's looking for a guy, Gary Hand, Espresso Coaching, this is not a paid advertisement. I'm just telling you, this guy is a freaking legend. And I'm so grateful that he has been in our corner. But yeah, we did in October, we actually did the first 1,000 miles of the Race Across America course. We had a smaller support team, but we essentially simulated the race for the first 1,000 miles. And so our first build last summer and into October was to build us up to actually make this 1,000 mile attempt. And so this big build into that. We're doing some long rides. There were some days where it was remember right before that, a couple weeks before that, it was a two back-to-back 12-hour ride days. Zone 2, not like hard, but like 12 hours, go to sleep, wake up, ride your bike again, 12 hours. Each one says 250 miles or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And then the same thing, actually I went to Antarctica in the middle of this, and Gary was amazing because I was like, hey, we're doing this cycling record, but I'm also doing this Antarctica thing. So he actually, obviously he's a cycling coach, but helped me figure out how to even build into Antarctica. And then after coming out of the crevasse, recover from that and build back up. And then we actually had a team training camp just last week in Austin, Texas. So we flew all 15 members of our team, our support team, into Austin, Texas, just outside there in the hill country of Texas, intentionally super hot, 95 Fahrenheit. I don't know, it was like 40, Celsius, something like that. Really humid, like 90% humidity, windy and hilly. Basically the worst conditions across the board to then simulate a race. And we actually simulated 24 hours of the race. So we actually went out there at race pace with all of our support vehicles for two reasons. One, for the volume and the training of it. But two, to actually see, how are these transitions working? How are the vans working? How is everyone working on the teammates? And how are the radios working? What's breaking? What's wrong with our system? And Gary was hugely influential in building us towards that. And before we even brought the whole team out there, the week before, me, Gary, and Lucas showed up in Texas about 5 days before everyone and rode heavy volume, 8-hour days back to back to back. So that when the race simulation started, we were actually going into that intentionally fatigued. I'm happy to say that we ended up for that 24 hours, we averaged, 21 and a half miles per hour, just about. So about, mile and a half faster than the world record pace, even coming off heavy volume. But now we're in the final 2 weeks. And so just literally right before this call, doing some sharpening stuff, less high volume, but just kind of keeping the body ticking over. The session that I just did, I was on my trainer just now, was more of like a HIIT, high intensity interval training. So it was basically 30 rounds of 15 seconds at 500 watts, 45 seconds, easy spin, 10 times around that, within 10 minutes kind of easy, and then back through that 3 times. Short session, it's an hour and 20-minute session, but just with kind of those, quick, sharp, kind of hits in there, as we kind of get our body into this taper phase, but we don't want to go into a dormant phase right now. You kind of want to rest, but you kind of want to still stay neuromuscularly switched on. So anyways, that's kind of maybe a little too in the weeds, but it's been great.
Small differences really matter though when they compound. We talked about, whether this is like 1,000 episodes into a podcast, when you make one small change, but you do it every single week over 1,000 episodes, that really ends up being a totally different product. And it's the exact same on the bike. And often these are invisible changes. Like you spoke about heading over to the UK to a wind tunnel, which it might seem like somebody listening to the podcast going, you're racing across America. What are you going to the wind tunnel for? You're not doing a 4K pursuit on the track. But if you can find 7, 8, 10 watt saving at a compounds over 3,000 miles, that's not a minute. That's not 10 minutes. That's hours.
Roadman, I know how serious you take your goal setting, whether they're fitness or life-related goals. If you're looking for a powerful ally to support you on this journey, look no further than Huel. Huel has become my secret weapon for when I don't have time to prepare a balanced meal. It ensures I get the nutrition I need without sacrificing time or taste. Plus, it stops me from reaching for that takeaway menu. I always throw a bottle into my backpack when I'm heading into the city to work, and it stops me eating junk convenience foods, snacking on croissants and bars of chocolate, because I know they don't support my training goals. It's a handy, nutritious meal on the go, and it's got over 22 grams of protein. Huel is perfect for athletes that don't have time to cook or prepare food before a training session. It's convenient, nutritious fuel at your fingertips, ensuring you hit your daily fueling needs for that session. Huel Ready To Drink has 26 essential vitamins and minerals in every single bottle. You're getting a whopping 175 health benefits. Plus, it's made from natural ingredients like tapioca, sunflower seed, coconut, and more. The best part, it's the flavors. There's 8 crazy, beautiful flavors. Iced coffee is what's in my backpack right at the moment. You can get Huel directly to your home. All you got to do is head on over to the Huel website, huel.com/Roadman.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it was amazing. Yeah, we so Lacal has been a sponsor of ours and incredible, and obviously they have the UK footprint, and they've worked a lot with the wind tunnel down there at Silverstone, where the Formula One facility is. And so as part was like, we always knew we want to find all, you said, these 1% and 2% gains because they compound so much over time. We've had great support, Ventum bikes, Princeton Carbon for wheels. And then, in terms of kit, Lacal, and they're like, hey, we've got this dial. Come over the wind tunnel. Let's spend some time in the wind tunnel and find these 1% gains. And they were amazing. So we flew over the UK in March, and it was actually fun. They greeted us in the Surrey Hills. We did a Easter Sunday group ride with the whole Lacol team down there. A bunch of the different, local cyclists from the Lacol group rides came out, and it was really, really super fun to just ride through the Surrey Hills. We rode, you would know it, the Box Hill, or was what they did.
Yeah, Olympics are up there.
The Olympic circuit, yeah. So we rode the Olympic circuit through there with them. So it was a gray UK day, as you would expect. So it was par for the course. But no, we really enjoyed our time over there. Then we went to the wind tunnel at Silverstone, which was amazing. I had never been in a wind tunnel before. I've seen photos and whatnot, but it was incredible. To go in there with our full TT. We've got basically two bikes. We've got the road bike, the NS1, and then the Ventum TT bike as well. Full disc wheel, tri-spoke in the front. We also have different dish, wheels from Princeton Carbon. So we're testing all the different things and our position. And it was incredible. These guys have all these computer, printouts basically in there, and they're, turning the slope angle, turning the wind up. And the littlest things, I mean, this, but it's amazing to see. They're like, okay, let's move your bars out, a centimeter and, drop it down a half a centimeter or something like that. And so we move that, and they're like, oh, that'll save you 8.5 hours over the course of RIM to hold that position. You're like, Jesus. But then with, certainly with gear and kit, it was amazing what Lacol was able to do. They basically, took all of our sizing, made us a couple of different custom suits, their speed suit, which is kind of more of a short sleeve, and then the full skin suit, which has got the long sleeve, perfectly measured for Lucas and I's, body. And then they also had us put on their, I was really impressed by this, which is, it seems so obvious, but just shoe covers. Lacol makes these, super aerodynamic shoe covers, put those on. And then Lacol also makes these, aerodynamic gloves. And every single time, we do it with no gloves, and they'd be like, okay, now put the gloves on. They're like, that's going to save you I can't remember the exact numbers, but that'll save you 3 hours. Take the shoe covers off versus putting the shoe covers on. Oh, that's going to save you, 5.2 hours. The difference between a normal cycling kit, which seems like, a tight fitting, good cycling kit, versus their, skin suit or their speed suit. Crazy difference. I mean, so much faster. And so, obviously on one hand, you want to train, and we've been, trying to push our FTP up and get our numbers and our watts and all this sort of stuff. But you start to realize you're like, I could be the fittest guy on the planet, but if I'm just wearing this baggy t-shirt versus, the Lacol skin suit or whatever that is, it doesn't matter how fit I am. The aerodynamics really matter, particularly when you're compounding over, 3,000 miles. And so it was fascinating. It's, of course, we intuitively know that. We know that's as cyclists, as, headwind or whatever, we can feel such a significant difference. But it was, I'm kind of a data, driven kind of person. And so to actually see, they're like, try this. And now the exact same scenario, try this. You walk over the computer and they can just show you, this is what it looks like over 3,000 miles, was like, wow. And so, I would have been happy with a 1 or 2% gain, but I think we probably found, 20, 25 watts, maybe somewhere as, 5 and 10% gains by all the different, switches we were able to make in the wind tunnel, which, obviously is massive. And so that was really cool. I'm excited. It was so grateful Lacol was able to set that up, and where we would do there was going to be a huge part of hopefully our success.
And have you gone to that same level of detail in other aspects? Obviously, training, kit, equipment seems to be in no stone unturned, but I often see that an area that a lot of people don't bother with, it's actually getting into their own blood work. Have you delved into that and been tracing blood markers through the course of your training?
Yeah, it's been amazing. So I've started working with this company called Function Health. I don't know if they're in Europe yet. I think they're coming to Europe.
Is this Mark Hyman?
Yeah, Mark Hyman, exactly.
Yeah, actually, I follow him. It's brilliant, some of the stuff.
Yeah. So Mark's amazing. He's one of the founders of this company called Function Health. I'm super impressed by it. Essentially, I'm just using their normal thing, but you can go basically in the US for $500, go get all of your biomarkers tested. So you get 26 vials of blood drawn twice per year. And it gives you this massive amount of data. Over here in the US, we have some issues with our healthcare. It's better in other countries, but we're one of the worst. I'll be on record saying that we've got a kind of a messed up system, but it's crazy expensive. It's hard to get blood work. It's hard to get this data whenever. It's Function Health has basically this solution that allows you to get all of your blood and biomarkers done in a really cost-effective and easy way. And what's most amazing about it, actually, they've got this online dashboard. And so all these biomarkers come back, but instead of getting like these PDFs of all this like doctorly information that you and I as a layperson couldn't understand, there's this super easy to read, user-friendly, essentially app or on website, and you can see all your bio blood markers. And then what's cool is that in Function Health, you do it twice a year. You can start to see trend lines, right? Like it's, my, LDL cholesterol, it went up, or my testosterone has decreased after this training block, or, I'm low on iron, I need more vitamin D or whatever. But you can also see that over longitudinal space. And so I actually started working with Function about 2 years ago, but really, intensely over the last year or so, getting ready for this world record. And, normally you go twice per year. Because I'm training so much, I've been doing it like every 2 months, basically. And it has been incredible to see all of the changes that I've been able to make. Basically,
starts getting really interesting, doesn't it, when you pair all these different worlds together? Because they kind of all operate in a silo at the moment, unless you're high performance. But if you start looking at, okay, we're going to do a threshold block, the normal data we have from threshold blocks is like we have heart rate data, we have power data. Maybe if you're pretty high end, you have lactate data. But now I wonder if you start to observe, well, what effect does that threshold block also have on my cortisol levels? What effect does it have on my testosterone levels? That starts getting really interesting.
Super. And what's been really cool with Function and my partnership now with them has been I've been able to do it before and after. Like, for example, that 1,000-mile ride that I talked about. Like we tested me at the end of a training block, got all my tests, and then went and did the test again because it's so easy to get the test done. The day after finishing 1,000 miles, like what happened to my body in 1,000 miles? And we're like, oh wow, like cortisol way up, testosterone down, this happened, whatever. And we go, well, how's my body recovering from that? And so not just like, we know when we've put ourselves through something, we kind of feel it anecdotally, oh, I'm heavy on the pedals today or this, but to actually see that data in the blood and go, oh, how can we take a proactive approach to this has been game changing. I mean, I literally can't sing the praises, Function Health enough. That they're doing amazing things over here in the US. I think they're going to hopefully have a global footprint very soon. But yeah, it's been remarkable to work and just to get that to me. I was a professional triathlete 10 years ago, and I'd look, man, if I had this access to that level of sort of blood work and things like that, it would have been extraordinary. It's been huge. It's it's those 1% and 2% and 3% gains. Really, really thrilled about it. Right now they're, I'll give them a little shout out here. They literally have 150,000 people on a wait list. That's how in demand they are. They've been like slowly rolling out people's access to it. But I have a code. It's just Function Health /Colin if you want to skip the line. If you're in the US market and want to check that out, I just literally, it's been game changing for me. And it's just been amazing. I wouldn't be shouting it out if I didn't feel that way, but it's crazy how much I've learned about my body and just like what's going on under the hood. And the thing is, I think of myself as a healthy guy. Like I'm training, I'm this, I'm whatever. And to realize like, oh, there's some nutritional deficiencies. Oh, actually I'm low on this or high on this. Like weird. I wouldn't have thought that. Like I never would have known, but it goes in such an in-depth way. It's been really, really remarkable.
Did you get data on falling into the crevasse?
It's funny. I actually did. We did the same thing because we were like, we're going to test him before Antarctica and we're going to test him after Antarctica. We're thinking it's me out there alone in Antarctica for 30 days. And with Mark Hyman, actually, him and I created this whole food plan, the exact like supplements that I was going to take based on my blood work to put in my food and balance my body. And of course, which was actually really cool. And I think that would have bbeen interesting to learn about. But then I fell in the crevasse and I was like, okay, well, the second I got back from Antarctica, the first thing I did is went because you can go to any clinic and it's so easy. It takes 20 minutes. You take all your blood, basically anywhere in the US. And so we did get the data on what did it look like on my body coming out of deep, deep trauma. And it was fascinating in the things you would expect or might not expect, but my hormone levels were way out of balance. And it wasn't from pushing myself because I thought I'd be pushing myself and be energetically depleted from food, but it's actually from I felt it on the day. I mean, I was literally crying and shaking for 24 hours from just the fear of what I've been through. I have some pretty harrowing videos of just me just like completely, adrenaline spiked, as the fear of death. But then to actually go get the blood work and be like, yeah, that had a real effect on your body. And I talked about Gary Hand, like being able to take that data, talk with Mark and Function Health, and then bring that back to my cycling coach because we're ramping up to this and be like, hey man, here's a snapshot of where I'm at. It's one thing to say to your coach, like, hey man, I almost died. It was bad. I was pretty freaked out. But to actually have the data and be like, and here's what's actually happening inside of my body. He was able to look at that, Gary was, and go like, okay, we got to build you back up slow here. We can't go right back into training. And so, yeah, that was interesting. The one other thing that has been new for me that I've really, I have felt a difference with, I don't know how much you've gone into this, but like in understanding mitochondria better and just the cellular vitality and cellular health. I've been, one of the things that came from my blood work is a need to kind of, optimize that. I'm 39 years old, I'm getting, deeper and closer into middle age.
I feel you, brother. I feel you.
This, and it's like, how can I recover better? And so, with Mark's, guidance, he got me, taking this MitoQ. This is a supplement around mitochondrial health. And I have felt, for me, sometimes with certain supplements, I know it's important, but I can't tell. But that's one that has really, I have felt a big difference. I really have felt stronger, more vital, as I take this, it's this easy supplement I take every day called MitoQ, but it's all about that mitochondrial health and really optimizing the cellular vitality. And I've definitely felt the difference as I've, and to this, I guess I want to say advanced stage, but an age where recovery isn't what it was when I was 25 years old. And it's been amazing to feel the difference. And that's one thing that we implemented on the backside of coming out of Antarctica in that recovery phase and building up for this race across America that I do feel like has made a big difference.
Do you know what was showing up in your blood markers that prompted them to advise you to take MitoQ?
It's funny. It's like there's so many. It's so much data. But it really was. It was seeing how some of my cells were breaking down, right? Like how I was actually, not having that efficiency of energy. I think I forget some of the. I'd have to go back into the deeper data of it. But it was interesting. I remember seeing, in talking with Mark and looking at my function panel, being like, well, let's try this. And then seeing like, oh yeah, like that's actually adjusting, and really kind of, and then of course, anecdotally, I can feel that, as well. But yeah, it's really fascinating to take that real look under the hood. And I think to me, cycling, I was a swimmer, I grew up as a swimmer. And of course, swimming is very clock based. So you're looking at the clock and it's down to the tenths and hundredths of a second. But it's really hard to measure in the same way that you can with a power meter, the same way you can with a heart rate meter, right? You can't really have devices measuring, even in this phase. Like there's still not a way to measure swimming. So, swimmers always talk about, the feel for the water and the way I felt coming off the block and my kick and my, tempo and things like that. And those are obviously super important. And I do think I know my body really well intuitively because of swimming. But one thing that to me that I love so much about cycling in contrast is like the data doesn't lie. Like it's very objective, it's like, I felt great today. Well, did you or was it that you were just going downhill with a tailwind and it just felt like you're riding your bike and you're going along, just barely turning the pedals over or vice versa. And so to have that, this year has been so fun with all the things we've talked about to do, basically have all that data on the bike like a normal cyclist would measure, but then to take that to the next level, with LaCall in the wind tunnel, and then to take that a next level of like, what's actually happening in my blood after this big push or after this recovery period or whatever, and to see what Function's doing with MitoQ, like what all these different shifts are happening. So it's fun to me, to get to the start line of this project on June 15th and really feel like we've there's been no stone unturned. We've really looked inside, outside, gear, fitness, health, nutrition, etc. And, hopefully that pays dividends. And then also some of the intangibles. Like I said, the teamwork element can't be understated to get together and, do some breath work as a team and some team building exercise and get to know each other on a human level and to optimize for that as well. I just feel like we've really, it's just been fun for me, honestly, to be like, let's take this and let's take this on in a serious way, and took a 360 approach. Yes, it is riding the bike fast and how fast Lucas and I can push down on the pedals, but what are all the factors that go into that? And it's not just, throwing together some big sessions on the bike and hoping we can spin a big gear across Kansas in the flats. It's really, a lot of different things added up, and it's been a blast.
And if nothing else, there's a beautiful feeling, and it's only probably happened to me once or twice in my cycling career. There's a beautiful feeling of standing on the start line and thinking, I've done everything I could to prepare as best I could for this event. Now, no matter what happens, it's in the lap of the gods, but I've done everything I could and controlled all those variables up to this point. That's a beautiful feeling. Roadman, I've got something exciting to share with you. It's been making a huge difference in my performance of late, especially when it comes to my sleep. Allow me to introduce you to Pillar. We're probably all familiar with the importance of electrolytes and carbohydrates in our race preparation. Pillar is taking a slightly different route. It's focusing on something called micronutrition, ensuring you're ready to perform even before you ever hit the start line. It's all about promoting a good night's sleep, facilitating effective recovery, and replenishing those crucial micronutrients so you can perform your best. Over the past month, I've been running a little experiment. I've been incorporating Pillar's triple magnesium supplement into my routine. I take it 30 minutes before bed every night, and I've seen a remarkable improvement in my sleep quality and my HRV. I'm tracking this every single night using my Whoop, and the results are there in black and white. I wake up feeling refreshed, having had a deep restorative sleep, and I'm ready to take on work, take on training, or whatever life throws at me the next day. But I want you to do something. Don't take my word for this. Let the data from your fitness tracker tell you the story. If you're ready to elevate your performance and elevate your sleep quality like me, why not give Pillar a try? Head on over to pillarperformance.shop and use the code ROADMAN on your local website to get 15% off your first order. If you're listening in the US, you can head on over to thefeed.com/Pillar and use the code ROADMAN for the same 15% off your first order.
Totally. And I will say confidently that I have had some success in expeditions where I haven't had that, but more often than not in my life, I've showed up to the start line being like, man, I probably could have trained harder for this, or I could have thought this one through, or whatever. So it is really fun. I do believe, the numbers prove out that I think Lucas and I, do have the physical capacity to do this. I feel great about the team. I feel great about everything. And I really do, feel like we've put as much hay in the barn as we possibly can to be at the start line. And just as well from cycling and other sports, like it's a few things have to break your way. If we get a thunderstorm with a headwind going 50 mile per hour the wrong way, we're not going to get there. And so it does feel good to say we've done everything we can, and now we need to just go live out this experience. And, for me, I'm just so thrilled to be able to feel that way and grateful to be healthy in my body and to be able to have a childhood best friend that I've known for 35 years to go have a great adventure with our entire team and see the country. I don't know how much we'll be seeing because I'm also just have my head down in the aero position trying to push hard. But we will travel the course of the country and hopefully we end up on the other side, as setting a new world record for this sub-6 project. It's been really fun.
And if Lucas is up for it, maybe we'll loop back in with him on the far end and we'll get the different perspective on the story, and he can tell us about how much of a drain you were for the entire 6 days.
Well, the fun, yeah. You guys will have great conversation, I hope, on the backside. But the closing thought, which is really funny, is we've had an amazing run up, like I said, this year, and all the us building the project together and all the fun camaraderie. But what you quickly realize is, if him and I, or one of us is always riding, and we ride past each other in the transition. Basically, one person rides past the other and the other one starts riding. But of all the people, I'm actually going to see Lucas for a grand total of 60 seconds across the whole 6 days. Because it's good job, man. And we pass each other. We're never in the same van. We're never stopped at the same time. So it's a funny thing. We're doing this together. But the one person I might not see at all is Lucas, if anything else. So I look forward to he'll have a good perspective to share with you on the backside, hopefully in success.
So best of luck with it. Keep the rubber side down and keep those fingers tucked and all your wind tunnel instructions that you're trying to memorize. Keep the chin down, keep the hands in, keep the shoulders shrugged. It's going to be fun. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
So if you like this video, you should definitely check out this video because I know you're going to love it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.